It started on a Wednesday. I remember that because the power went out in the building during a budget meeting and everyone was forced to sit around with their phones, pretending to care about the daylight. I texted her just to kill time. A photo of my sad vending machine lunch. No reply. Not even the 3 dots. Whatever. I thought she was probably busy. She'd been busy a lot lately. By the time I got home, the apartment smelled like vanilla and fake citrus. The kind of chemical clean smell you get when someone's trying too hard to erase something. She was in the kitchen wearing leggings that were too tight and a shirt that wasn't hers. I'd never seen it before. Charcoal gray, slightly oversized, with a little emblem I couldn't make out. I stared at it too long. "What?" she asked, barely glancing up from chopping cilantro. She hates cilantro. "You hate cilantro." She paused, just for a second, then shrugged. Guess my tastes changed. I should have asked more then. Should have pushed. But instead, I let the moment slide off me like oil. I laughed it off, made some dumb joke about finally converting her, and grabbed a beer. But it didn't sit right. That night I couldn't sleep. She did like a corpse. Back to me, blanket pulled tight, phone face down on the charger. I lay there staring at the back of her head and tried to pinpoint what was different. She didn't smell the same. That was what stuck. Not bad, just different. A stronger perfume. Not hers. Over the next few days, the clues didn't stop. They just got smarter. More calculated. Her work schedule, always slightly chaotic, turned into a series of perfectly timed excuses. She was always 10 minutes too late, always had a story rehearsed down to the breath. I noticed things. Nails always done. Phone always locked. She started wearing jewelry again. Not much, just enough to tell me someone was paying attention to her in ways I no longer was allowed to. Then the gala invite came. I wasn't supposed to go. Her company was holding some kind of executive dinner downtown, and she was just attending for networking. That was the word she used. Networking. Like she was building a LinkedIn profile in heels and red wine. But I decided to show up. Not because I suspected something I already knew. No, I wanted to see it. I wanted to look it in the face. To stand in the same room as whatever poison had been dripping into my life, smiling like it belonged there. I wore a dark suit. Naughty. Walked in late, didn't check my coat. The place was all glass and silver, the kind of place where people pretend their marriages are fine and their bank accounts are full. I scanned the room once, twice, then again. And there she was, backless dress. Hair curled in ways she only ever did when we were first dating. Laughing. Not just politely. Laughing like someone had told her the secret to immortality. Her hand rested lightly on the shoulder of a man I'd never seen before. Tan. Tall. Wearing a watch that cost more than my car. He leaned into her as he spoke, and she tilted her head just enough to let the chandelier catch her earring. She looked comfortable, like she belonged to this scene. She hadn't seen me yet, but someone else had. A short, balding man in a crisp suit walked toward me with a glass of champagne. I thought he was security at first until I saw the pin on his collar, CEO. I recognized him from her LinkedIn. Thomas Whitmore, mid-50s, charming in a way that felt rehearsed. "You must be the husband," he said, handing me the glass I didn't ask for. "Didn't know she invited you." "She didn't." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then, without a word, he reached into his jacket pocket. I'll never forget what came out. A bra. Red. Lacy. Familiar. Folded neatly like a piece of mail. He held it for a second, then tossed it, at my chest like it was a damn party favor. It hit me and dropped onto my shoes. The room didn't fall silent. No one gasped, but a few heads turned. A few laughs came, quiet, short, confused. "She left that in my office," he said, as casually as if he was talking about an umbrella. "Thought maybe you'd want it back." Everything in me screamed to hit him. Scream. Flip the table. But I didn't. I just smirked and reached into my own jacket pocket. Because I hadn't come empty-handed. You see, for the past 2 weeks, I'd been doing more than noticing things. I'd been collecting them. And tonight was my turn. I pulled out the envelope slowly, letting him see the edge of the photo before anything else. His eyes narrowed. He didn't reach for it. I didn't offer it. That wasn't the point. "It's funny," I said, folding the envelope between 2 fingers like it was a business card. You toss her bra at me like I'm supposed to melt. But you didn't check the printer on the 16th floor. Did you? Thomas Whitmore, CEO, predator, coward, took a half step back. Not much. Just enough to let me know he understood this wasn't a bluff. He tried to recover. Smiled again, broader this time. Look, I didn't mean anything by it. Just a joke. You know how these things go. We've all had a little too much to drink. You haven't had a drop, I said flatly. Neither has she. I turned then, not to leave, to look. Across the room, she'd finally noticed me. Her mouth parted. She froze. Her hand dropped from Tan Watchman's shoulder like it was suddenly made of fire. She didn't move toward me, just stood there, dress shimmering, eyes trying to calculate how much I knew. I didn't wait. I walked past Whitmore, brushing his shoulder on the way. Calm, controlled, my hand still on the envelope. The one I'd spent days filling with things she never thought I'd find. Receipts, screenshots, one hotel keycard, room 814, downtown Marriott. A copy of the lift logs from her business phone. The stupidest, most damning thing? A selfie, taken in a mirror I recognized, not ours. Her smile was forced, her eyes glazed, and there was a man in the background brushing his teeth. He wasn't even fully in frame. That was the kind of arrogance she'd started swimming in. She tried to speak when I reached her. Whispered my name like it was some kind of spell. I didn't answer her. I turned to Tan Watchman. You her boss? No, he said immediately. Too quickly. Just a friend. I nodded. Right? So you wouldn't mind explaining how your belt ended up in my laundry 2 weeks ago? His face cracked. Not all at once. Just a twitch around the mouth, a shift in his shoulders. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed my wrist. Mike! No, I said quietly. Not tonight. I slid the envelope into her hand. It bent slightly under her fingers. She looked down at it like it might burn her. Then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Laughed. Not hard, not loud. But the kind of short, sharp, dismissive chuckle you'd give someone who just accused you of stealing $5. And then she shook her head. You've been spying on me? No, I said. I've been listening. Watching. You left the trail. I just followed it. You think this proves something? She asked, eyes now cold. You think walking in here with your little folder of evidence makes you the smart one? You don't even know the half of it, Mike. That was when I felt it. Not anger, not pain, not betrayal. Something worse. Something quieter. Clarity. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she enjoyed the theater of it. The power. The idea that I might know, might suspect, might be destroyed by her boldness. She wasn't ashamed. She was amused. I leaned in close so only she could hear. This is the part where you panic, I whispered. Because I haven't even told you what I did yet. Her face twitched. I stepped back. Took a sip of the champagne Whitmore had handed me. Still untouched. Still warm. Then I walked away. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just enough to let the silence build behind me like smoke. But the night wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't drive home. I walked for 3 hours. Past bars pulsing with other people's music. Past alleys that reeked of old secrets. Past late-night delivery vans spilling out crates of fruit under flickering lights. I needed the noise of the city in my ears. Needed the movement. Sitting still felt like surrender, and I wasn't ready to surrender anything. Not yet. By the time I got back to the apartment, my shoes were soaked from a sprinkler I didn't dodge. My jacket was still draped over my arm. Her envelope? Still gone. She hadn't chased me out of the gala. Hadn't texted. Hadn't called. Of course she hadn't. I stepped inside and realized instantly that she had beaten me here. The bedroom door was shut. No lights on. There was a silence in the air that didn't feel like calm. Felt like strategy. I didn't say anything at first. I just walked past the door and into the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Closed it again. Nothing made sense in that moment except the sound of the compressor humming like a warning. Then her voice. You think this changes anything? It drifted out from behind the bedroom door like smoke. I didn't answer. She opened the door slowly, wearing a sweatshirt I bought her 3 years ago in a Denver airport. The sleeves were too long. Her hair was pulled up, face scrubbed clean, raw, maybe even vulnerable. But I knew better. Vulnerable was a performance, and she'd always been an incredible actress. What do you think you've accomplished? She asked, stepping into the hall. That depends, I said. Are you still lying? Or are we past that now? She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. I made mistakes. Sure. But you going full detective mode and humiliating me at a work event? Real adult of you, Mike.
Esther here.
You were sleeping with the CEO. Once, she snapped. And it was months ago. He meant nothing. It was stupid. He was drunk. So was I. Then why'd he still have your underwear? Her jaw clenched. That was the first real break in her mask. The first honest thing she gave me all night. I don't owe you details, she said. You were never really here anyway. Always at work. Always tired. You made this easy. There it was. Not regret. Not remorse. Just deflection wrapped in condescension. You know what's funny? I said calmly. I didn't come to the gala to fight. I came because I wanted to see how far gone this was. And now I know. Far gone? She laughed again. Please, you think people don't cheat? You think you're some tragic hero because your wife got bored? I moved toward her. Slowly. Not to threaten, not to intimidate, just to get close enough so she couldn't dodge what was coming. I think I married someone who learned how to lie with her eyes open. And now she's mad that I finally opened mine. For a second, just one, her face changed. Not regret, but something. A flicker of the woman I used to know. Then it vanished. I'm not going to grovel, Mike. Good, I said, because I'm not staying. And with that, I turned, walked to the closet, pulled down the old duffel I kept for weekend trips, and started filling it. She didn't stop me. She just stood there, watching, calculating, waiting. But she didn't know I wasn't just leaving the apartment. I was leaving the script, because the next part was mine to write. I didn't slam the door when I left. That would have been too clean, too satisfying. Instead, I pulled it shut slowly, letting the sound of it click like the final lock on a vault. The duffel was heavy with whatever clothes I grabbed. But none of that mattered. What mattered was what I left behind, and what I took with me that she hadn't realized. I didn't go to a friend's. Didn't check into a hotel. I went to the one place she'd never think I'd choose. The apartment above her favorite wine bar. A friend of mine managed the place. He owed me a favor. The kind of favor that doesn't ask questions. Just hands you a key and says, stay as long as you need. Don't break anything. That night I didn't sleep. I lined up everything. Laid out every piece of the puzzle on the floor. Photos, receipts, time-stamped call logs, names. I wasn't just proving betrayal anymore. I was reverse engineering it. Building a timeline. Constructing a map. Finding out how deep the rot went. And it went deep. She wasn't just sleeping with Whitmore. That wasn't even the beginning. There was a pattern. Different names. Different locations. One of them wasn't even a person. It was a shared Airbnb account that had a separate email. Her college friend, she once claimed. Turns out her friend had a second phone plan she paid for. I traced it. The number was still active. This wasn't a one-time fall. It was a life she'd built beneath ours. That realization didn't hurt. It lit something up in me. By morning, I had a plan. I sent her one message. You'll want to come clean before this turns into something permanent. She didn't reply. Not in words. But 3 hours later, I got a message from an unknown number. Mike, we need to talk. Please. It wasn't her voice in the text. It was someone else. I called the number. A man answered. Hey, this is Daniel. I don't want trouble. She said you'd want to hear it from me. I didn't speak. She said you'd found out, he continued. I just want you to know, I didn't know she was married. Not at first. She lied. Said she was separated. Said you were a roommate or something. By the time I knew the truth, I was already in too deep. And she... Look, she's not who you think she is. Oh, I know that now, I said. She's dangerous, man. There was something in his voice. Fear, regret, both. That caught me off guard. Like he wasn't just scared of getting caught, but of being used. Like I had been. She told me you were stalking her. That you were unstable. I laughed. Couldn't help it. He didn't. Be careful, Mike. I'm serious. She doesn't lose. She doesn't let herself lose. I ended the call. Let the silence take over again. And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I made a phone call. To a lawyer. Not to file for divorce, not yet. To file for protection. Because if there's one thing I learned in all this, lying is one thing, but premeditation is a whole different battlefield. And she'd already drawn her lines. Now it was my move point. 2 days passed before I heard from her again. Not a call. Not a knock. A letter. Printed, not handwritten. Delivered in a white envelope with no return address. Slid under the door like a threat dressed as civility. I opened it slowly, expecting something venomous. Instead, it was disturbingly polite. Mike, I understand you're angry. I would be too. But let's not escalate this. We can sit down and talk through this like adults. No more theatrics. Let's remember what we built. I'm still willing to fix it if you are. Fix it. She wanted to fix this. I sat on the floor, surrounded by her lies, and read that line a dozen times. It didn't make sense. None of it did. Not unless she was planning something bigger. Something I hadn't seen yet. That's when I realized this wasn't guilt. It was control. And I wasn't playing her game anymore. I didn't answer the letter. Instead, I showed up not at the apartment but at her office. No warning. No text. Just walked straight into the lobby of the sleek glass tower where she'd spent the last 3 years climbing over people like a staircase. The receptionist blinked at me as I asked for her. I gave my name. Waited. 5 minutes later, she appeared at the top of the stairs. All sharp heels and sharper eyes. She wasn't expecting me. She was pretending she was. Mike, she said, smiling like we were old friends bumping into each other at a wedding. This isn't the place. No. I cut her off. It is. I walked toward her. The receptionist watched, wide-eyed. The hallway behind her fell quiet. A few curious faces peeked from glass offices. I just wanted to ask one thing, I said. In front of everyone. She froze. If this is all just a misunderstanding, a mistake, why did you try to frame me? She blinked. The moment stretched. The people watching stopped pretending to work. Excuse me? She asked, a pitch too high. You told your little side project Daniel that I was unstable, that I was stalking you, that I might be dangerous. You made him afraid of me. That's not what He recorded the call. I said, smart guy, you should choose better idiots. Her face didn't flinch, but her hands did. The right one clenched slightly, knuckles pale. I don't know what you think this is. I think this is your last warning. I leaned in, close enough that only she could hear the next words. I filed the paperwork. You'll be served within the week. And if you so much as text me something that smells like manipulation, I'll make sure your board sees everything. Every file, every photo, every message. I stepped back. You built this mess. You can sit in it. And then I left her there, alone, in front of her world, still trying to remember which version of herself to wear. The elevator down felt like an exorcism. I didn't breathe until the doors shut. Didn't smile until I stepped outside and let the sun hit my face like I'd earned it. This wasn't over. But the balance had shifted. For the first time since all of it started, I wasn't the one reacting. I was the one making moves. The server arrived at 9:17 a.m. on a Friday. She was wearing a dark blue jacket and a small silver pin. Discreet, efficient, unbothered. She knocked once on the office glass, leaned in just enough to get her attention, and handed over the envelope. My lawyer made sure it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no public display, no camera flashes or spilled coffees. Just a clean, silent delivery of reality. The contents: petition for legal separation, pending divorce, protective notice regarding defamation, and a warning. Any further communication would need to go through counsel. She waited 10 hours to respond. Came through in the form of a voicemail. Just breathing at first. A shallow inhale. A shiver behind the voice she tried to keep steady. Then, so this is how you want to play it. That was all. Not a plea. Not a fight. A statement. A challenge. And I knew then. She still didn't believe she'd lost control. Because people like her don't understand loss. They only understand delay. But I wasn't stalling. I was dismantling. Over the next few days, I did what I should have done months ago. I reached out to the people who used to know us. Friends we hadn't seen in years. My own sister, who she always said was too dramatic to deal with. Turns out, my sister had suspected something long before I had. She just never said anything because, in her words, you looked like a man who would have bled for her if she asked you nicely enough. I went to lunch with a friend of mine, a guy who once dated her best friend and had the emotional intelligence of a human scalpel. We talked for hours. He told me things I didn't want to hear, about how she tested people slowly, subtly, about how she treated truth like it was a piece of clothing, useful only when it fit the moment. She doesn't want a partner, he said, stirring his coffee. She wants a stage. That line stuck with me. A stage. That's what our life had been. Not a marriage. A performance. But I wasn't in the audience anymore. 2 nights later, it happened. She showed up. At the wine bar. My safe place. She walked in like it belonged to her. Wore that same charcoal gray shirt I'd seen her in the night everything cracked. No makeup. Hair tied up. Fake vulnerability again. But this time, the act didn't land. I saw her before she saw me. I was sitting at the bar back corner. She scanned the room. Spotted me. Walked over slowly, deliberately. The place fell quiet in that strange way bars do when tension enters the air like a cold draft. "Hi," she said, trying to sound soft. I didn't respond. She sat down. "You're staying here now?" I sipped my drink. Didn't answer. "Look," she said. "I made mistakes. But you did too." I set the glass down. "I didn't lie." "No. You just disappeared. You shut me out. You turned into someone who watched me like a project instead of a person." I laughed short, bitter. "I turned into someone who finally stopped worshipping the version of you kept changing." Her smile faltered. "You think you're the victim?" "No," I said. "I think I survived you, and now I'm not interested in going back into the fire." She leaned in, eyes narrowing. "This isn't you, Mike. You're not cold. You're not cruel." I met her stare. "No." "But you are." Silence. For a long time, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached into her bag, pulled out something small, slid it across the table. The red bra, the same one, neatly folded, placed on the bar like an offering. "Or a dare. Thought you might want to finish what he started," she said. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel hurt. I felt nothing. I stood up, left the bra where it sat, walked out without a word. Because that was the moment I knew. She couldn't win anymore. She could only perform. And I wasn't her audience. The bar door shut behind me, and with it, the sound of her voice vanished like steam off a glass. I didn't look back. I didn't care if she chased me, if she called out, if she stayed planted on that stool waiting for a reaction. I'd given her too many of those already. Now I had none left. By the time I got back to the upstairs apartment, my phone had 6 missed calls. 1 from her, 5 from unknown numbers. I turned it off. The next morning, things started moving faster than I anticipated. My lawyer called. Apparently, her attorney had received the paperwork, and their response had been unusual. "No counterclaims. No negotiations." Just a short, blunt statement. Client disputes all allegations and intends to file for full marital asset control. That made me pause. Full asset control? That was a move reserved for people who were either reckless or desperate. She wasn't reckless. She was precise, calculating. So why the desperation? I called the bank. That's when I saw it. She drained one of the joint accounts. The smaller one, the one we used for travel and house repairs. Not life-changing money, but enough to sting. Enough to signal her intentions. This wasn't a divorce. It was war. I didn't panic. Pivoted. First, locked down everything. New passwords. Canceled cards. Closed the old accounts. Notified my employer. Let them know, just in case, that someone might try to reach out pretending to be my spouse. They raised an eyebrow, asked if I needed security. I said no. Not yet. Second, I went to the storage unit. She'd forgotten about it, or maybe she thought I did. We rented it when we first moved in together. Filled it with boxes we never unpacked, old photos, wedding keepsakes, half-broken furniture we were too sentimental to throw away. I didn't go there for the nostalgia. I went for the old laptop. Mine. The one I hadn't used since 2019. The one that, by sheer accident, still had an auto backup of our shared cloud drive. And that, right there, is when everything changed. Because in that backup, I found a folder she'd deleted months ago. It was labeled Notes, Shared Docs. Nothing remarkable. Inside, a spreadsheet. Names, dates, locations. Some entries were marked with initials. Others had emojis. A few had asterisks. And in the final column, short notes. Good for business. Only once, too emotional. Possible backup plan. We'll talk if pushed. Idiot. Don't revisit. It wasn't a diary. It was a list. A roster. Of men. I scrolled for almost 15 minutes. There were over 30 names. 30. I stopped at one. A name I recognized. My coworker. We'd gone out for drinks once. Casual thing. He mentioned she was cool, intimidating in a hot way.
Y de lauga.
Bought the next round. His name was listed. His note. Knows too much. Careful. I leaned back in the rusted metal chair of the storage unit, lit by a single overhead bulb that buzzed like a warning, and stared at the screen. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't about love, or lust, or even betrayal. It was strategy. She didn't cheat because she was broken. She played people because it worked, because it got her things, because nobody ever caught her with both hands full of knives. Until now. And I had all of it. Time-stamped, organized, cold. The game had changed. And this time, she wasn't the only one holding sharp objects. I left the storage unit with the laptop in my bag and something heavier in my chest. Not rage. Not even bitterness. It was clarity. The kind of dead-eyed realization that comes when you've stopped seeing someone as human and started seeing them for what they are. A threat that thinks it's still wearing your wedding ring. The list wasn't just ammunition. It was a blueprint of her manipulation. Proof that everything she'd said about mistakes and bad judgment was a soft lie to cushion the brutal truth. She wasn't out of control. She was in full command. And now she was losing it. The next morning, I forwarded the spreadsheet to my lawyer. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about strategy, about leverage, about how a person like her reacts when the curtain starts to fall. His advice was simple. Expect the performance of a lifetime. Narcissists don't die quiet. He wasn't wrong. Later that day, she called. This time I answered. Mike, she said, voice syrupy, almost sing-song. I've been thinking, maybe we don't need lawyers for all of this. We could talk. Just you and me. You stole money, I said flatly. Borrowed. You tried to make people afraid of me. I protected myself. You were acting crazy, Mike. You kept AF ******ng ledger. Silence. Pure. Chilling silence. Then, you found that. I did. Another pause. She breathed in slowly, like she was choosing her next line like a lawyer picks a jury. That's not what it looks like. That was a game I played with myself. Fantasy. None of it's real. There's time-stamped emails backing it all up. Okay. Then we'll talk about this calmly. Rationally. You had a category labeled, possible blackmail material. That doesn't sound rational. She didn't speak for almost 20 seconds. I thought she hung up. Then she said, carefully, like every syllable had been passed through a shredder and reassembled. You want to ruin me? No, I said. I just want out. Clean. Quiet. You take nothing but your lies. And if I don't? Then I burn it all down, I said. And I'll smile doing it. For the first time, her voice cracked. You won't. You're not like me. That's exactly why I will. I ended the call. 20 minutes later, she called again. I let it ring. An hour after that, she sent a long email. Rambling, defensive, almost poetic in its attempts to shift blame onto my emotional neglect and disconnection. At the end, she wrote, I made bad choices, but you let it happen. That's the truth you're too scared to admit. I printed it. My lawyer called the next morning. She's requesting a private settlement. No court.
No statements.
Of course she was. Because court meant exposure. Court meant the spreadsheet became public record. And her career, her image, her carefully constructed persona would collapse under the weight of her own cruelty. I agreed to meet, not to reconcile, not to negotiate, but to watch her crumble in real time, face to face. Because predators forget. The moment they start bleeding, they look just like everyone else. We met at a law office that reeked of bleach and fresh paper. One of those neutral spaces designed to feel sterile, balanced, like truth could somehow be birthed in laminated conference rooms. Her lawyer was there. Mid-30s, expensive glasses, an aura of quiet panic. She sat beside him wearing white. Of course she did. Clean, soft, innocent, like the war hadn't already been carved into her name. I sat across from her with nothing but a notepad and a hard drive.
No folders.
No drama, just facts. The room was still when we began. Her lawyer did most of the talking. Offers, divisions, statements about amicable resolution and dignified closure. I let him finish. Then I opened the notepad and slid it across the table. On the first page was the list. A redacted version, names blacked out, but the format intact. Enough to know what it was. Enough for her face to shift, if only slightly. She tried not to look, but her eyes betrayed her. They flicked across the page with surgical precision. She knew every line. "This," I said calmly, "is what I don't want made public." Her lawyer started to speak. I held up a hand. "I don't care about revenge, but I do care about truth. And if she pushes me, I'll let it speak for itself." Her lawyer turned to her, whispering furiously. She sat very still. I could see the calculation in her eyes. The theater unraveling. She wasn't used to this, not silence, not exposure. She was built to manipulate chaos, not to answer to it. Then softly she spoke. "Not to me, to him. We'll accept the terms. No fight.
No his.
Just surrender." Tucked behind her teeth like poison, she wasn't ready to swallow. Her lawyer looked stunned. "Are you sure?" She nodded once, then turned to me, and for the first time in all of it, I saw something new in her. Not remorse, not sadness, but hatred.
Pure unfiltered.
Because she didn't lose to a better liar. She lost to someone who stopped playing. "I hope you realize," she said, voice low. "None of them mattered." I looked her straight in the eyes. "You never mattered." Her mouth twitched, the kind of twitch people get right before they cry or kill. Then she stood, adjusted her coat, and walked out.
No signature. No handshake.
Just silence and the slow click of her heels against the tile. A retreat, not an exit. Her lawyer stayed behind to finalize. I watched the door swing shut behind her, half expecting it to burst open again. For her to come back and scream, throw, burn the place down. But she didn't, because she knew. It was over. And not in the way she was used to, not in some dramatic heartbreak she could spin into sympathy. This was quiet, humbling, powerless. Exactly what she couldn't survive. It took 3 weeks for the paperwork to finalize. In that time, she went dark. No messages.
No appearances.
Not a single theatrical flare in the sky. She vanished into the same silence I once begged her for when things were good, when I used to ask for just one night without games, without tension, without her measuring me like a threat she hadn't decided how to disarm. She gave it to me now, the silence. But by then, it was too late to feel like peace. The settlement came through clean. She took nothing of real weight. The car she barely drove. Some personal items. Her name off every joint account, every lease. The spreadsheet never left my possession. It didn't need to. Its existence was enough. My lawyer called it the most efficient divorce he'd ever processed. I believed him. There was no apology.
No catharsis.
Just facts and ink. And when the final email came with the subject line, "Final decree, case closed," I didn't pop a bottle, didn't burn the past. I sat in the quiet upstairs apartment and let it land. 7 years, over in 31 PDF pages. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. It was like finally leaving a building you didn't realize was burning. The air hits different, but you still carry the smoke. Some nights I wonder if she tells new people about me. If I've already been rewritten as the villain in her next tragic retelling. The emotionally unavailable husband, who snapped out of nowhere. The boring one. The one who couldn't handle a strong woman. Let her. People like her always need a story. But here's what I know now. She didn't ruin me. She revealed me. She showed me exactly how much I'd been willing to shrink for love that never loved me back. How long I'd lied to myself just to keep something whole that was already hollow. And I learned that the worst betrayal isn't cheating. It's the slow, deliberate killing of your trust, your peace, your reality, while smiling through it all. So if you're out there reading this, in the middle of that creeping feeling in your gut, thinking maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's just stress, maybe I'm the problem. You're not. You're waking up. Listen to that voice. Because once you finally do, the smirk you give them, the one they never see coming, will be the last thing they remember when their world stops turning. You don't need revenge. You just need to stop letting them write your ending. Let them keep the bra. You've got the pen.